Hey guys, what's going on? Tenebris here. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about something that I've seen a lot of on the Hypixel forums and across the entire Minecraft community, and that is whether or not Hypixel should replace Watchdog with AGC, or if AGC could even work on Hypixel in the first place. And there's a lot to break down here, but pretty much ever since I made my video comparing Watchdog and AGC, there has been a movement of people on the Hypixel forums especially saying like, oh, Hypixel should just get AGC, like, you know, you could just implement it and it would be so much better than Watchdog, all this stuff. And then in the same threads, there's always these people on the Hypixel forum saying, oh my god, AGC could never work on Hypixel because Hypixel is such a different server and like AGC only functions on a practice server and therefore there's no way they could implement it in the entire world and it's just a lost cause and everything. So there's a lot to break down here, including a few responses I want to go over to people who have responded to my AGC versus Watchdog video. And I really want to talk about this because of a few reasons. Number one, Watchdog isn't really in a good state right now, to say the least. And number two, there's been a lot of people thinking that AGC, if they just bought AGC, you know, this is going to be the end of hackers on Hypixel. It's all over, guys. All they have to do is just buy AGC from My Men Club, which is also not entirely true. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So I wanted to basically talk about all this stuff. So let's talk about AGC versus Watchdog to start off. Now, obviously, Watchdog and AGC operate in a very different environment to each other, and I've mentioned this a lot of times before, including in my video comparing Watchdog and AGC. Like, for example, Hypixel has to deal with TNT jumping, which could create bypasses because they have to exempt the player when they go on a TNT, explosion, and the player could use that to fly around, and Watchdog would have to exempt them if they don't want false bans. And because of that, Watchdog and the number of game modes they have to deal with, there's not just that, but there's lots of different game modes they have to deal with, is said by a lot of people not to be comparable to AGC. However, I'm going to completely disagree with that statement. And that's simply because when it comes to certain cheats and certain detections of those cheats, the number of game modes, the number of players, the variety of game modes, or anything like that have absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the effectiveness of the check. Now, a prime example of this is the reach check. The AGC reach check is much, much, much better than the Watchdog reach check. I've personally never heard of anyone getting banned from Hypixel for using like 3.3 blocks of reach. Now, there might be instances out there, but I've personally never heard of any, and I'm sure a lot of blatant cheaters can also attest to the fact that Hypixel Watchdog's reach check is really lenient. On the other hand, AGC detects below 3.3 all the way down to a little bit above 3 blocks, and there's a world of difference there, and that cannot be explained by the game modes on Hypixel or the fact that Hypixel has more players or anything. It literally just comes down to code, and that's all it is. There's no explanation, because no matter what, your reach is always going to be the same. There's no difference. And reach isn't the only cheat, but that's pretty much my counterexample to anyone going like, oh my god, Watchdog and AGC aren't comparable. Yes, they are. In terms of certain checks, they definitely are. However, that does not mean that Hypixel should implement AGC in its current state. That is a completely different thing. Just because AGC is better than Watchdog doesn't mean that it's going to be more effective than Watchdog in its current state when implemented directly onto Hypixel. If Hypixel were to, for example, buy AGC, it would definitely need to be modified heavily in order to incorporate Hypixel's game modes and their whole server infrastructure. And that's what people don't really realize. It's not just buying AGC and implementing it, it's buying AGC, implementing it, and then modifying it to work on Hypixel. And that might be more difficult for the Hypixel developers to work on than to code their own anti-cheat. However, as I said before, that's not the case for every single type of check. For example, if Hypixel just implemented AGC's reach check, it would have virtually no false flags that they would have to really worry about. So I thought I'd take the rest of the video to respond to some of the counterclaims to my previous video on Watchdog versus AGC. Now, to start off, we got a Hypixel forum post here, and I'm going to be reading a few things that they said to defend Watchdog against my claim that AGC is in fact better than Watchdog. So one of the main counterexamples to my video was the fact that people said that Hypixel is just more popular than MyMinClub, and therefore there's more people trying to make bypasses, and therefore blah 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 blah. That's not entirely true. In fact, it's just easier to make bypasses on Hypixel than it is on MyMinClub, and that's why there's more bypasses. It's not because there's more players wanting to make bypasses. It's literally because it's easier, and you can see that because there's lots of servers that are tiny out there that get bypasses made. For example, one of my friends' HCF servers has a ton of bypasses made for it, and like MyMinClub has its own bypasses made for it. And another problem that I've seen is that people seem to take issue with the fact that I used Watchdog bypasses on Varus and AGC to prove that Watchdog was worse than Varus and AGC. But that's kind of the point. The point is that a AGC bypass should work on Hypixel and on AGC, but a Hypixel bypass should work on just Hypixel. Now, that is not entirely true. However, it is mostly true. And another thing that I've seen is like, oh my god, no matter what, the anti-cheat's bypassable, which is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my entire life. Okay, let's just look at this objectively, okay? Let's take the hack regen. The regen hack. Now, the way regen works is it basically sends more packets to the server. So you send 21 packets on a tick loop or positions on a tick loop, or it uses timer to speed up the game time and then regen yourself faster or whatever, right? The servers have patched that for like 6 years or so because it is not possible to bypass a regen check unless it's really stupid. Unless the regen check is literally terrible, it's not possible to bypass. AGC literally just extends the exact same principle to fly and speed. It's the exact same thing. They hard patch speed and fly on the server side, and bringing up some old invaded lands version of AGC to prove your bypass doesn't really do anything. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have to say on this. There's just a lot of misinformation out there. I just want to clarify this, and let me know what you guys think. Should Hypixel implement AGC in the comment section down below? Pack will be in my Discord, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.